Welcome to our special coverage of the return to Earth of the Shenzhou-14. Now, the three-person crew on board Shenzhou-14, as you can see now, the main parachute is already opened and they are now less than 10 kilometers from the ground. And the estimated landing time will be completed within 10 minutes. And right now, you're seeing some infrared pictures of the landing process of the Shenzhou-14 crew. The capsule carrying three crew members will be making the touchdown in less than 10 minutes time. And the touchdown site is at the Dongfeng landing site in North China, Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region. Well, the three astronauts went into space in June, carried by a Long March rocket, which lifted off from the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center, and now it's time for them to come home. They've been living in low Earth orbit for the 6 months on board China's space station Tiangong. While it will be a challenge for the search and rescue team, as this is a cold winter night, limited visibility and low temperature. I'm very pleased to be joined by our space expert, Mr. Yang Yuguang, and he will be talking to us all the necessary expertise for us to better understand the landing process, as well as the geography and weather conditions at the Dongfeng landing site. And Professor Yang Yuguang is from the China Aerospace Science and Industry Corporation. He's also the vice chair of the Space Transportation Committee at the International Astronautical Federation. Professor Yang, great to have you. Well, at this stage, we could say that it's really up to the search and rescue team to locate the capsule and find our astronauts and welcome them home.
Well, you can see that on the left of screen is the video from the infrared camera on the ground. And you can also see that just several seconds before, the re-entry capsule just released some smoke. That is the remaining propellants inside the propulsion systems of the re-entry capsule, because you know that it is toxic, so must release that before landing.
And on the right-hand side, we can see that from that split window, search and rescue vehicles are already on the go, and they've done the drills in trying to locate and search and rescue the astronauts from the Dongfeng landing site. What is the challenge here to locate these astronauts and to find them on the right spot during such a cold winter night?
Well, you know that during the whole re-entry procedure, we just adopted a controlled re-entry, which means that during the re-entry, we can use the propulsion systems on board the re-entry capsule to change its trajectory. And also, you know that we will conducting 3 to 4 times of forecasting of its locations based on the multiple data resources. For instance, we have the inertial measurement unit on board our re-entry capsule. We also have navigation satellites receivers on our capsule. Moreover, you also have other measures to measure the very precise trajectory of the capsule. So that is the reason why we can conducting 3 to 4 times the forecasting of the prediction of its landing point. Based on this kind of data, we will inform the rescue team several times, and they will maneuver according to these kind of predictions. And then they can, with their help, they can go to the landing point as fast as possible. And I believe that the next critical step will be the reading of the seats of the 3 crew members.
So as we can see there from that screen, infrared pictures, otherwise we won't be able to see it so clearly. At night, this main parachute with the returning capsule is moving at a relatively low speed visually, but what is the actual speed here?
When it touched down, you know that the velocity vary according to along with the altitude. But at the moment of landing, it will be about 3 to 2 meters per second. Moreover, we also use some small solid rocket engines to continuously slow down the touching speed to reduce the impact of our astronauts. As I mentioned, just at this right moment, the seats of the 3 crew members has already been raised. so we can have another energy dumping for reducing the impact. These are very important steps.
The cushioning effect.
Exactly.
Right.
And also, as I have mentioned, there we have what we call the gamma ray altimeter, which can precisely measure the distance between the bottom of the vehicle and also the ground. So at about 1 meter, this gamma ray altimeter will trigger the full rocket engines. So it's
Right.
already very close to the ground.
This is the main parachute, and we talked about this earlier. You said there are different stages of parachutes being opened according to the altitude of the capsule and also the pressure of the capsule.
Yes, exactly. So but honestly speaking, all these critical steps has already been accomplished.
And now this is another image. Is it still
Yes.
infrared? With more colors?
I believe so. And you can see that it is a pseudo color, so it's not the real color. Just the transfer depending on its different wavelengths and also responding to the real color.
So explain to us, Professor Yang, why is the landing window being chosen at night? Because we know for the previous mission, the Shenzhou-14, the astronauts landed during daytime, and it would be so much easier for search and rescue team.
If the landing conducted tomorrow, it will be a different time comparing with today. That is the reason, that the basic requirement to the landing is that we must conducting the re-entry orbit insertion at the point when the landing site is rotating along with the Earth and passing through the orbital plane of the Shenzhou spaceship. So this is a basic requirement. So we don't have other choices. Only at this moment we can conducting the re-entry.
Yeah, but the other question would be, why is the Dongfeng landing site being chosen as the landing spot for China's manned space missions?
As you know, that during the years before, we chose the Shizhiwang banner as the main landing site, but several reasons caused us to change its position to the Dongfeng landing site. One of the reasons is that that we have a rescue team during the liftoff, during the launch. So choosing the landing site at the same place, we can only use one rescue team. So that will save a lot of money. So this is a very important reason. Another reason is that that with the development of our local economy, the Shizhiwang banner is more crowded, populated than before. So it's not safe enough for the landing of our Shenzhou spaceship. The other reason comes from the area. That the total area of our Dongfeng landing site is more than 13,000 square kilometers. So it's much larger than the Shizhiwang banner landing site.
But wouldn't it be more difficult to search, to locate very precisely the returning capsule, given the area of the
But
Dongfeng site?
That our station, that okay, one of the ground stations has accomplished its tracking. As the voice has mentioned, that one reason we choose a so large area is because that our space station orbiting the Earth in a more than 10-year period, the time span. During this time span, the altitude vary from about more than 300 kilometers altitude to about 400 kilometers. So the altitude is different during different landings. But with different landing altitude, the point of landing will be different. So the total area of the landing site is bigger.
And we could see this returning capsule is getting closer
I
and
believe
closer
this is
to the
a camera.
horizon,
This
to
is
the
a video from the
ground.
camera of a ground vehicle, and we can see the
At
bright
a pretty
spot.
high altitude.
Okay, we can see that from this video, the re-entry capsule is very bright, and the parachute is a little bit darker, and it is already very close to the ground.
Yes, getting closer to the horizon, and it is their time to come home.
Yeah.
They've been living and working.
Okay, great.
Is that
Touchdown.
landing, touching down?
The
Right.
flash comes from what I mentioned, the small rocket engines.
So this is a pretty successful landing, can we say, at this
Absolutely,
stage?
absolutely. And sorry, I made a mistake. This video must come from the helicopter, because we can see that from a distant way.
Right, so if you just joined us, this is our special coverage of the returning mission of China's Shenzhou-14 crew. 3 astronauts were working and living in China's space station for 6 months, and
We
it is
just,
now their time to come back home.
We just heard voice from the flight control, Beijing Flight Control Center, the fourth forecasting, the fourth prediction of its landing site, the coordinate, the real coordinate. And
Right.
from this video, we can even already see the re-entry capsule. I believe that comes from the ground vehicle.
And we can see this main parachute is ready to float
Exactly.
it. And now I believe the ground search and rescue team is rushing to the landing point.
Yes.
And again, they've gone through different rounds of trials to make sure that they can locate the returning capsule precisely, and then to find these 3 astronauts on time so that our astronauts wouldn't be waiting for so long.
东风，我是北京。
And the weather at the landing site is estimated to be around minus 20 to minus 15 degrees Celsius, and that certainly will be an obstacle for the search and rescue mission. The equipment, will they be impacted
It's
by
a little
the
bit
weather?
cold, I believe. So that's not a good condition, but we can afford that. It's still within the design margin of our rescue.
Does that also affect the astronauts who are on board the returning capsule?
In an ordinary routine, the hatch will be opened by the ground staff, not by the astronauts themselves. You know that there is a reason. In most cases, the re-entry capsule is not in a vertical position.
Yeah.
Usually, it will lie down because that's the centroid or the center of its mass. It has some deviation from its symmetrical axis. So that is the reason. Usually, it's not in a vertical direction.
Okay, we are seeing one bright spot in this vast Gobi Desert, and that is the returning capsule of the Shenzhou-14 mission. 3 astronauts are on board this returning capsule, and our search and rescue team on the ground is racing against the clock to find them and bring them back home.
This is
And
also
again, excuse me, right there, we have some background information for you. This is the Shenzhou-14 manned space mission. These 3 astronauts were working and living on China's space station Tiangong for 6 months, and they have lived there for 183 days. 3 astronauts and the commander of the 3 astronauts, Chen Dong, commander of this mission, holds the record for the longest in-orbit time of a Chinese astronaut after spending a total of 214 days on 2 space missions. And this is certainly, Professor Yang, a very exciting time for the scientists, for China's space mission, and for the astronauts, and also for their families. Families haven't been able to see them for a very long time. We've just got news that one of the female astronauts, Liu Yang, her father was saying that he hadn't been able to see her in the past 3 years.
yeah, exactly.
东风明白。
As I mentioned, you can see that the re-entry capsule is not in a vertical position.
How long does the search and rescue operation usually take?
Well, that depends on the precision of the prediction of this landing point, and also it depends on the real position, the real-time position of the ground team. But you've already seen that we can get this video directly from the helicopter, so I believe it's already very close to the re-entry capsule. So it will not take much time for them to reach the re-entry capsule. But it is very interesting. You see that the first operation of the ground team is to block what I mentioned, the gamma ray altimeter, because it is radioactive. So we usually use the lead box to block the gamma ray altimeter to avoid any hazardous radiation to the ground team.
And we know there are vehicles on the ground, and then there are also the aerial search team with helicopters high up there trying to spot the re-entry capsule. How do they coordinate their work?
雄鹰已到达着陆现场上空，概率重量为东经腰动动度动3分动8秒，东经腰动动度。
So we are listening to the audio messages from the command center, trying to give the very precise location of the landing spot of the Shenzhou-14 returning capsule.
We just heard that the rescue team is reporting the real coordinates of the landing point.
Right.
Because they also have the navigation satellite receivers on the vehicles.
现场降落。
So my question just now was about how the ground vehicles and our aerial search team up there in the sky, how do they coordinate their mission?
They have communication links between each other. You know that several before they also use the Tianlian data relay satellite to form the data link between different, especially the helicopters. You see that, but we also have other radio communication measures during the whole process. And you know that there is one helicopter act as the commander of all the coordination groups.
And China has really come a long way. Looking at this picture, we can see the rescue team already. They're passing right in front of the camera. Maybe journalists even carrying tripods. They are approaching.
You may notice
capsule.
that the re-entry capsule is the brightest body in this video.
Because it's the hottest?
Exactly. Because the brightness represents its temperature. So it's still very hot now.
Right.
Because of the high speed and of course the friction between the surface and the air.
And this mission is very significant, highly significant in the sense that it really completes the construction of China's own Tiangong space station.
So the Shenzhou-14 is the most important mission during the construction phase.
Right. So good job, search and rescue team. It's taken them, I think, less than 10 minutes to locate the returning capsule.
That's right. It's very fast. That also represents that the predictions are very precise.
Does it also remind you of China's first manned space station back in 2008?
I believe that the Tiangong-1 was launched in 2011 during my first cooperation with CCTV News.
But I mean China's first manned space mission.
Is in 2003.
2003.
The Shenzhou-5 manned mission. Mr. Yang Yiwei became the first Chinese to visiting the outer space.
So thinking about what China has achieved over the past 20 years, it's pretty remarkable that China has already put in place its own space station, having different manned space missions, and even up on Tiangong, the rotation of 2 different crews
in orbit. So you know that today our Tiangong space station is as good as the International Space Station. Both these 2 stations belong to the 4th generation space station among all those of human beings. Now you can see already many ground staff has arrived near the re-entry capsule.
And I believe they're setting up the perimeter and ready to open up the hatch for our astronauts to come back and face people who are anxiously waiting for their return.
The mechanics will first check to confirm the physical status of our astronauts.
Yes. So when they land, when they make that touchdown, will the astronauts be able to, deal with the impact of landing? Have they been trained for that? How much of an impact would that be?
Although they have been trained for this, but still it's a remarkable impact. And moreover, you see that they have already stayed in the microgravity environment for half a year.
It's a totally
so
different
the readaptation is a critical step for them. But although in ordinary case they will be rescued by the team, but they can rescue themselves in an abnormal case.
So if you've just joined us, this is our special coverage of, you're watching live infrared pictures from the Dongfeng landing site.
The re-entry capsule is still very hot.
It is.
It is still the brightest body.
Is the search and rescue team waiting for the heat to disperse and then they can approach the re-entry capsule?
That's not the problem. I believe that they must checking the status of the, that as I mentioned, there are toxic propellants inside the propulsion system of the re-entry capsule. So maybe some of them will test if there are any leak of these kind of toxic propellants.
Sure.
And then they will open the hatch.
So this returning capsule separated from the Tiangong space station earlier today, and around 11 a.m. to be exact. That's about 8 or 9 hours from now.
Yes.
What has it experienced in between the separation and its touchdown?
Wow, that's a really complicated procedure. You see that our Shenzhou spaceship is composed of 3 modules.
Right.
The orbital module, the re-entry capsule, this one, and also the propulsion module. So after undocked from the Tiangong space station, we will first conducting orbital maneuver to leave away, to keep away from the station in a safe distance. And then we will have a rotation in your direction, about 90 degrees. And then we will separate the orbital module from the re-entry capsule. So this is the first separation. And then continue to rotate for 90 degrees to the retro direction. And then we will have the re-entry burn with the rocket engines mounted on the propulsion module. We have 4 of these engines with a thrust of 2,500 newtons each. So if we only need 2 of these engines to ensure the safety, but we have 4. So you can see the reliability.
The rescue team is approaching the returning capsule. It looks like they are getting very close to the hatch.
I believe
is
they
it
will
the
open
moment
the
for them
hatch
to
soon.
open it up?
Yep.
It's pretty amazing to see how modern tech. Now, we have our journalists on the ground, and this is our live picture from the people there right around the returning capsule. And this is certainly a very exciting moment.
雄鹰报告，车外无水井浓度检测为零，舱体外
This
观
is the
检查
returning
正
module
常
of China's Shenzhou-14 space mission. 3 Chinese astronauts are on board this capsule.
As I mentioned, the voice just reported the condition about the hydrogen. The hydrogen is a propellant used by the re-entry capsule, and it is toxic. So they must, to ensure the safety of the ground team,
Of
they
course.
must ensure that there is no hydrogen remained. And just you may see the beacon on the re-entry capsule. So that is a signal for the rescue team to get them easily to see the re-entry capsule.
So right now, is there a communication between the astronauts on board and the search and rescue team? Do they know where they are at the current stage?
Well, as we have already discussed, after the blackout area, just as the communication link can be re-established between the ground station and our re-entry capsule. So there is no difficulty for the Shenzhou-14 crew to communicate with the ground. I believe they've already in a very relaxed
Yeah, they're
condition.
finally home.
Yeah. But this time is not so ideal like the Shenzhou-13 last time. You know that last time the Shenzhou-13 is landed in a vertical direction.
A vertical direction,
Yeah, that will be
easier
more
for the astronauts to
that
come
will be
out.
more convenient. But this only happened 2 times during history. Only during the Shenzhou-6 mission and the Shenzhou-13 mission.
All right. Is there any technical maneuvers to, try to help it land at a very desirable
Well,
location?
that's difficult. You see that the moment of cutting off the parachute is the most critical operation. But
Cutting off the parachute, Professor, is it done manually or is it being controlled by the command center?
it was done manually by the astronaut sit on the right side. Usually, this time probably it will be Miss Liu Yang.
Okay.
Last
Liu Yang is-
time during the Shenzhou-13 landing, Miss Wang Yaping just conduct this.
And Ms. Liu Yang and Ms. Wang Yaping are China's first 2 female astronauts.
Yep. And both of them are the 02 crew member of the team.
And this is Liu Yang's second mission in space.
Exactly. Liu Yang also has a PhD degree.
Right. So that gesture, what does that mean? This rescue team, he was pretty waving, pretty excitedly.
Everything goes normal, I believe.
Okay.
And you may notice that the ground team wear the suits in different colors, so they represent the different system. Some comes from the landing side system, and some come from the astronaut system. And that's those in blue color. They are the ground team from the astronaut team, and they are in charge of the medical care of our astronauts.
So this is certainly a massive endeavor requiring coordination and cooperation from different systems of China's manned space mission.
We just heard from the landing side system that the hatch has already been opened.
And we are expected to see our 3 astronauts pretty soon.
But before they go out of the hatch, there is a microgravity readaptation procedure.
Of course, they've been up there for too long, for 183 days to be exact.
They will prepare 3 seats for the crew member, for the Shenzhou-14 crew.
This happens every time to allow them time to adjust to
And I believe they've
gravity.
already prepared a very thick clothes for them.
Of course, it's again, it's about -20 to -15 degrees Celsius, with probably wind at the Gobi Desert in Inner Mongolia. We feel even colder. But that's not important now, isn't it, Professor Yang?
Already
Because they're
not,
finally
you're
home.
quite right.
They've gone
Yeah,
through.
yeah.
They've
So
overcome
they will
so
be
many difficulties.
taken good care by the medical teams.
Right. When can they see their families back home?
Well, I believe maybe late this night or maybe tomorrow they can see their when they reach Beijing airport, the Beijing Xijiao airport. So they can usually their family will waiting for them there.
And this long expected rendezvous
Yeah,
with
yeah.
their families.
Yeah.
So,
已经安全着陆，
So-
动摇感觉良好。
successful landing, and the commander is feeling well, and we hear the female astronaut Liu Yang saying that she feels good.
北京
And
明
the
白，
other astronaut,
祝贺
number
神舟
three,
14号
蔡，旭哲
你们辛苦了，向你们致以崇高的敬意。
and the command
我
center
们在北
saying
京迎接你们凯
that
旋。
thank you for your hard
北京
work.
见。
We'll be waiting for you to come back in Beijing.
The first voice comes from Mr. Chen Dong, the commander, and
Yeah.
then Ms. Liu Yang and Mr. Cai Xizhe. So all the 3 crew members feeling well.
And that's certainly good news for us, for the space scientists, for the astronauts and their families. And I believe the Shenzhou-14 crew currently on board the Tiangong space station is also waiting anxiously for the arrival, for the landing of their peers. They've done this in-orbit crew rotation on China's space station earlier today before their departure, and this is certainly significant.
Yeah. And the in-orbit handover is the first time we China conduct that. And in the future, we will continuously see the Chinese people residents in the Tiangong space station for the
Yeah.
next at least 10 years.
It will be a routine practice for Chinese astronauts.
So the rollover of each team will be half a year in normal case. But Mr. Zhou Jianping, the chief designer of our manned space program, said that it is possible in the future we will also have long durations,
声音报告，
Longer than 6 months.
maybe 1 year.
Wow.
正在对
So that will be very meaningful for the study on space medicine.
报告完毕。
Sure, how to keep the well-being of the astronauts, how to better allow them to adapt to a totally different environment.
Exactly.
So again, the Shenzhou-14 crew has been dubbed the busiest crew in China's manned space station because they were responsible for so many tasks, including monitoring the arrival of the Mengtian and Wentian space modules, assembling the 2 different modules into the Tianhe core module, overseeing rendezvous and docking procedures, 5 of them. And they've also conducted 3 extravehicular activities. They've given 1 live science
正
lecture.
在建立警戒区。报告完毕。
So the search and rescue team are now setting up the perimeter around the return capsule.
As we've seen from this video, that's the team, the crew members with blue uniform are those from the astronaut system, actually speaking the medical
报告
cares.
完毕。
And they will check the status, confirm that everything is okay to bring them out of the capsule.
Yeah.
And during this procedure, they must be very careful, as we have already discussed, because they need a readaptation procedure to the gravity environment. So if the operations is too violent, they may cause some hurt to the
Yeah.
astronauts.
Even though the 3 astronauts have already said that they're all feeling well, I think these space scientists are also double checking, making sure that they're ready to step out from the
Exactly.
capsule.
现场组织工作报告完毕。 北京版。
Again, the commander of the Shenzhou-14 mission, Chen Dong, holds the record for the longest in-orbit time of a Chinese astronaut. He spent altogether 214 days on 2 separate space missions.
Yes, because you know that Mr. Chen Dong also engaged in the Shenzhou-11 mission. During the Shenzhou-11 mission, Mr. Jing Haipeng and Mr. Chen Dong stayed in our Tiangong 2 laboratory for about 1 month. Actually speaking, 33 days in orbit.
采样，报告完毕。
So they're also taking samples from the returning capsule. What is that? What is the purpose of that practice?
That is for engineering study. You know that we have an environmental control system. So every time if we want some improvement to this system, we still need to study the real operation. So this time, you know that the Shenzhou-14 spacecraft has already stayed in outer space for half a year.
防覆盖。报告完毕。
And right now we could see a bigger group of vehicles arriving.
More
at
ground vehicles.
More ground vehicles.
And
arriving
just
on the
we heard
site.
his voice, Mama, you may notice that there is a voice report that a protection cover was covered to the gamma ray altimeter to protect it from leaking more radiation.
No.
Because we already have this protection, you may notice now the ground team can go to the other side of the capsule.
So I've been keeping track of the time. It's taken the search and rescue team more time to, allowing, as you said, the toxic air to disperse and to double checking on the conditions of the astronauts and to set up their perimeters than the time it took them to actually locate the returning capsule.
Yeah.
But all the wait is worthwhile.
And at this moment, you know that the re-entry capsule is the only part we retrieved from the Shenzhou spaceship. The other 2 parts, the orbiter module is still orbiting the Earth, so it will de-orbiting soon, maybe in the several days. And the re-entry capsule, the propulsion module, just after separation from the re-entry capsule, is already been burned out in the atmosphere.
So this returning capsule is also the one that they were
the only
that they
part.
were on board
Yeah,
when
yeah,
they
yeah.
were launched into space.
Yes. Moreover, you see that we also have some control panels inside this re-entry capsule. For the, that during the docking with the station, if anything wrong happened to the automatic docking system, the astronauts can switch that to a manual docking mode and use the handles to conduct a manual docking.
So the designed lifespan of this
雄鹰
returning
回北京电
vessel
话，
is
动2动1
is there
36
a very
2915。
approximate.
Well,
approximate-
just several months before, Miss Liu Jiaxin, your colleague, just
雄鹰回
come
北
with
京
me
电话，
to a museum to
36
see the
2915。
Shenzhou-13 capsule. It's really small.
雄鹰明白。
And just imagining these 3 astronauts sitting in a very confined and very limited small space and having to go through all the difficulties and overcoming all the obstacles as they re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. That's pretty remarkable.
And this time, I believe that just within this capsule, they also, that they have the seeds they grown in outer space. The
Right.
seeds of rice and
Yeah.
also some vegetables. You know that they've already conducted a very meaningful scientific experiments to grow the rice from seeds to seeds, which means that from seeds to raise the whole plant and then grown into to get the seeds.
It has a very great symbolic meaning, doesn't
The
it?
harvest
Very
in
fruitful.
orbit.
That's right.
So, there are also other samples, I believe, that get from the scientific research.
So the team was untangling the parachute from the re-entry capsule. It seemed that they just cut it off directly from the returning capsule.
Already cut off by the astronauts, probably by Miss Liu Yang.
Yeah.
And from the video on the right, we may notice that still there are other vehicles approaching the landing site.
Yeah. So not only us, I think the world is also watching as China's space capabilities grow.
Yeah. So this is very safe and perfect landing another time. And our Shenzhou-14 crew has already the most important and the busiest crew of during our construction phase has returned to the Earth
雄鹰报告，
very
三
safely.
美元
Yeah.
防覆盖已安装，报告完毕。
So the landing site is again in Inner Mongolia, northern China.
Yes,
And
in
this
the Gejina banner.
yeah, this is a vast Gobi Desert.
Yes.
And as Professor Yang just mentioned, 13,000 square kilometers.
13,000 square kilometers.
Right. It's
Very,
a pretty
very
massive
bright,
land area.
yeah.
And you imagine the technological requirements to
航天员
locate
身体状态检
this
查正常，
relatively small object.
The physical examination of the astronaut has been accomplished. So I believe the one in blue uniform are those crew from the astronaut system
Yeah.
who are in charge of the health of the astronauts.
And it'd be such an exciting moment for the three astronauts to see someone else besides their peers, because when during their time up there, they could only see one another. And then just last week or a couple of days ago, that they were meeting their peers from the Shenzhou-14 crew.
Now I'm curious what Liu Yang will bring to her two kids this time. You know, last time.
Tell us about that. She's
you know,
mother
last
of two.
time Miss Wang Yaping brought a star to her daughter.
Yeah.
Because she has promised to her daughter.
So many mothers in China
Yeah,
were
yeah,
moved
yeah.
to tears.
And her daughter's name is Zhao Yunxi. So Yaping just promised her daughter to bring star to her. But you know that's Liu Yang has a boy and a girl. So I'm wonder what she will bring to her kids, to her
Yeah.
two kids.
We'll see. And I wonder if the journalists on site will be asking her that question. Is there a communication time for the astronauts and their families when they are on board the Tiangong space
Actually
station?
speaking, they have video calls with their family
Video
members.
calls.
Exactly. So they can call every day if they miss their family members. And they can even check their homeworks.
Yeah, but certainly this would be the call that you could get from the farthest possible place right now.
Yeah. So this is the help of the Tianlian data relay satellite. Because we have this Tianlian data relay satellite, in most cases we can directly have the communication between the ground station to our Tiangong space station.
Is that the system also being used to track the location of the re-entry
Part
capsule?
of its function that it is, but not the most major function.
公里外。
So it's been almost 20 minutes for us to see the rescue team approaching right around the re-entry capsule.
Yeah.
And
So they have a lot of work to do. We've already seen. So first they will check if there are still any hydrogen left
Right.
near the vehicle because it is toxic. So we must ensure the safety both for the astronauts and for the ground team. Second, as we heard the voice from the landing site system, we need a protector to the radiation source, to the gamma ray altimeter,
Right.
also to ensure the safety. Third, you know, that the medical teams need to check the physical status of our three crew members. So only in this case, we can, as you mentioned, we can bring them out of the capsule.
sure.
雄鹰报告，落点测量完毕，返回舱落点坐标为东经幺洞洞度洞3分
The search team is also reporting to the command center the coordinates of the landing spot of the returning capsule of the Shenzhou-14 mission.
41度，
Everything is conducted in a very precise way.
北纬41
So
度
again,
9
let's
分
also
3秒，报告完毕。
remind our audience of the names of our three astronauts. They are Commander Chen Dong, Liu Yang, and Cai Xuzhe.
We just heard the voice of the landing site system report the final or the real coordinate, the longitude and the latitude of the landing point. So this is a good reference to evaluate our predictions before. As we have already discussed, we have 3 to 4 times our prediction of the landing point. But this time we already get the real coordinate, the longitude and
To see
latitude.
how it deviates from the original.
Exactly. So with this, it's a good reference for the future missions. Also very meaningful.
Of course.
落点纬度、北纬、自由度。
And you just heard that the Beijing Flight Control Center repeat its coordinate to all systems.
Yeah. So it's remarkable for us to look back at
雄鹰报
the
告。
way, the journey that China has made into space, all the way from the Shenzhou-14,
东风明白。
China's very first astronaut into space,
Yes.
and that was back in
2003.
2003.
Yeah.
It's been almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And now China not only sends astronauts into space, but it
So
also
this
has its own
Shenzhou-14 is
spaceship
the
up
ninth
and
crewed
running.
mission. Shenzhou-14 is the ninth crewed mission of China. So it is amazing that we just complete the construction of our space station with only 10 crewed missions,
10 crewed missions, right?
including Shenzhou-15.
And right now, 3 astronauts are carrying out their duties on board China's space station. They will be staying there for 6 months, and then they will be rotating with another batch of astronauts.
Exactly.
And as you mentioned, there are hopes that in the future, China's astronauts will spend some more time in space.
Yes, so for certain kind of scientific research. And I believe that Shenzhou-16 will be launched maybe next May or next June.
Well, it seems that I can ask you any sort of questions about space. What is the longest duration of stay for
Human being.
human being?
Well, the longest duration single mission records is kept by Mr. Polyakov, a Russian astronaut who just passed away recently. So his record was made during a flight to the Mir space station many years before. And also, you know that during the flight of the International Space Station, there are 2 crew stayed there for nearly 1 year, more than 350 days. So each time there is a U.S. astronaut and a Russian cosmonaut stay there for about 1 year. These are very meaningful studies. You know that in the future, this kind of research can be recognized as a preparation to the human missions to the Mars.
Exactly.
You know that a single mission to the Mars and back usually is more than 500 days. So so you can see how necessary it is to conducting these kind of tests.
And how much human being could endure, even the most trained astronauts, to see their limits and capabilities.
Yeah. And you know that, but the longest accumulated record of astronauts in outer space is more than 800 days. But by several missions.
That's amazing.
Mr. Peggy Whiteson, also a female astronaut from America, makes this record for the U.S. And she mentioned to the media that because the total dose of radiation has reached for her, so the NASA does not allow her to go to outer space again.
Right. So as we could see right there, live picture from the Dongfeng landing site, the returning capsule of the Shenzhou-14 mission is right now lying on its side. As Professor Yu just mentioned, this is not an ideal position
But it is
to
normal.
bring out these astronauts.
Yeah.
Upright would be the ideal
The reason
position.
I mentioned, you know, that there is a deviation from the centroid or the center of mass away from its symmetrical axis.
Yeah.
So this is reason in most cases, after touching down, it will lie down in most cases. And if you want to landing vertically and keep this position, as we've already discussed, the moment cutting off
雄
the
鹰报
side,
告，航天员座椅安装完毕，报告完毕。
So it says the astronauts' seats are being set up. Where
Yes.
are they setting up the seats
it's,
for the astronauts?
it's just
Are they
very close to this re-entry
right
capsule.
outside the re-entry capsule?
It's just not very far from this capsule. After getting out of the capsule, they will first sit there.
So they've already cut off the cord of the main parachute, which really slowed down the re-entry capsule. And we are seeing a very timely recovery of the re-entry capsule. And of course, the Dongfeng landing site is also the site where the Shenzhou
the
previous
launch.
missions.
For the landing, not. Only from the Shenzhou-14 mission, we just use this Dongfeng landing site as the main landing site.
Okay.
Before this mission, all the Shenzhou spaceships were recovered in Siziwang banner.
So the seats are being set up. We don't have the red carpet to roll out, but very symbolic welcome ceremony, very simple. But this is a very exciting and significant moment to welcome our heroes back home.
And I believe that your colleagues, maybe some of the reporters, are already reached this place.
Yes, we do have our crews there. Zheng Yibing was talking to the head of the search and rescue team, asking them about the difficulties trying to recover in such a cold winter night.
It's so hard for Yibing. It's so cold.
Yeah. And of course, they've done rounds of trials to make sure that they can carry out this timely recovery based on their prediction and certainly their experience in recovering other space missions.
Yeah. And just the day before, the whole team, the whole system just conducted the final rehearsal to testing if everything is okay, to ready for welcoming our heroes back home.
Yeah. And so it's taking the search and rescue team quite some time to check the exterior of the re-entry module and also the safety of our 3 astronauts on board this returning capsule.
And you know that because we have multiple ground vehicles, so it needs some time. So on the right of this split screen, we can still see that some of the ground vehicles are approaching the landing point.
They're still rushing to the landing
Yeah,
point.
yeah, yeah.
Why
They're in a
so
hurry.
many vehicles?
Yes. And you know that there are 3 specially designed chambers for the astronauts to move from this place to the airport nearby. And even they have toilet inside these chambers. And they will be cared in a very good condition. So I believe that they will fly from the Dingxin airport near the Dongfeng landing site and then back to the Xijiao airport, very close to the downtown.
Will they be reporting back to the command center in Beijing?
They've already reported to the command center, as we've already heard the voice from Mr.
They don't have to do it in person.
Yes.
Okay.
And also, all of them are in good condition. So from the voices, we can see that they are very exciting.
Yes, it's certainly an exciting moment to step out of that returning capsule and to put their feet on the ground, literally to put their feet on the ground. Because up there, it was a different environment with low gravity.
Yeah. So at this right moment, they are just readapting the gravity.
How long does it usually take for astronauts to adjust back to the Earth's environment?
It depends. You see, we've already discussed when the re-entry capsule landed vertically, so this will be the most convenient status for the astronauts. So usually, in this case, it will not last long because they are very comfortable. But honestly speaking, in this lying down position, is not so comfortable like the vertical landing. So also, how long it will take for them to readapt the gravity also depends on the
individual physical condition.
And in the details of these individuals.
东风雄鹰报告，动摇航天员出舱前准备完毕。
Okay, so
Mr. Chen Dong
the
is
final
ready for-
preparation is ready for the commander of this mission, Ms.
Yeah.
Chen Dong, to step out from the return capsule.
Mr. Chen Dong also is the first commander from the second batch of China's astronauts.
Right.
Yeah. So he also made history.
And he's now 43 years old.
And he already conducted 3 EVA during his mission. And only Mr. Zhai Zhigang and Mr. Chen Dong has ever conducted 3 EVA among all Chinese astronauts. So he also made history this time.
Yeah, and as you mentioned just now, Professor, the commander, Mr. Chen Dong, his space debut was back in 2016. It was the Shenzhou-14 mission.
Yes.
And it set a record for China's then longest stay in space of 33 days.
That is what we call a midterm residence in outer space to test the corresponding technologies.
Are we getting visuals of the astronauts? I think I've seen
Not now.
their...
Not now. They are just preparing the seats. You may
I
see
think
that.
I've seen their feet already.
I think the blue one is a sleeping bag, I think. It looks like a sleeping bag.
And this is the moment we should say, welcome back home, our
Exactly.
astronauts. So, the female astronaut we'll be seeing in just a moment is Liu Yang. She made history as China's first woman in space. She's also 43 years old. And as you mentioned, Professor, she's the mother of 2.
Yeah, and Mr. Chen Dong also have 2 boys, a twin. Twin boys.
And for them, it will be a very long time away from home.
Yes. As you mentioned, Liu Yang's father has not seen her daughter
Now
for
we are
more
getting
than 3 days.
visuals of our astronauts, the commander
Mr. Chen
of the
Dong.
mission, being assisted to step out of the returning capsule. And he's in full gear. This is the landing uniform,
Yeah.
as we could suppose.
雄鹰报告，
This is a totally environment for our astronauts to adapt to. They've spent so much time up in space and he's waving. It looks like that he's in perfect physical condition after the 6-month mission in space.
Yes.
报告完毕。
And you may notice that he is still wearing the IVA spacesuit or the intravehicular activity spacesuit. So this is to keep his safety even if there is any leak of the re-entry capsule. So this is a very necessary protection.
And our journalists are already approaching him, taking this significant picture to capture the moment.
太空之旅，
We are hearing from the
很
commander.
有幸见证了中国空间站
He
基
says
本构
he's very
型
lucky.
建成。
The
我
construction
们像
of the China
流星
space
一样
station.
回到祖国的怀抱。
Like
为
meters
伟大祖
right our
国
way
感到
back
骄傲。
home to our motherland. I
谢谢，
feel
谢
so
谢。
proud of my motherland. Thank you all.
The other 2 astronauts to step out of the returning capsule. A big congratulations to Chen Dong, Liu Yang, and Cai Xuzhe. They've spending so much time in space, 183 days. They've been away from home for 6 months.
Yeah.
And they've done quite a number of important endeavors, among which is, of course, the construction of China's very own
Yeah.
space station.
And what you mentioned, Mr. Cai Xuzhe was born in 1976, and he was the code of him is 03. And interesting that I seen, that he just eated the vegetable they grown in outer space.
Okay, so our astronaut system, the staff back there was asking if he wanted to put on his mask.
Yeah.
I think probably 2 considerations. One is low temperature.
Yeah,
As
quite
he
right.
inhales the cold air, it could have an impact on his respiratory system. And another is that China is still
Because after 6
the
months of the
COVID
flight, they are
outbreaks.
in a relative weak condition.
their immune system would need time to
Exactly, quite right.
recover.
So that's what I mentioned, the ground chamber.
Yeah.
The chambers, there is even toilets inside.
One for each astronaut?
One for each. So there are 3.
Right. So the commander of the Shenzhou-14 mission, Mr. Chen Dong, is already being transferred to the chamber, ready to head back home, and we are waiting for the 2
Maybe next
other
will be Miss Liu Yang.
astronauts. She's number 2 in this mission.
Yeah, exactly. So her code is 02.
And yes, a big congratulations to them, to our space scientists, to all the engineers who have made this mission possible.
Yeah, as we've already discussed, usually in ordinary operation, it is the duty of 02 or Ms. Liu Yang to cut off the parachute. So this is a very critical step.
It is. But as you mentioned, the previous mission, Ms. Wang Yaping, also a female astronaut, was responsible for cutting off the cord
But
of
that
the
is a
parachute.
very ideal condition, you know, that Yaping just at the right moment to cut down the parachute and the landing is vertically.
Right. It certainly takes a lot of practice. The intensity of training is unimaginable to
You may notice there are
ordinary people.
strong winds. There are strong wind near the landing site this night. So cutting off the parachute will be very important for ensure the safety of the capsule.
It's a very critical step.
Yep. As we mentioned, the total area of the parachute is 1,200 square meters. Very, very huge.
The parachute, 1,200 square,
1,200 square meters.
1,200 square meters.
Even larger than a basketball field.
So, given the size of the, there we are seeing another astronaut being assisted out of the returning
Probably
capsule.
they will be Miss Liu Yang.
She is number 2. Miss Liu Yang is now 43 years old, and this is her second time in space. And our reporter, from the information that we are gathering from our gallery, our reporters from China Media Group is conducting the interview, and
Well, we
she
can see
looks
the
so
smile
happy.
on her face.
There's this big smile. Welcome back home. And they all look in great physical condition.
你好，刘洋，重新回到祖国，此刻感觉怎么样？
Welcome back. How do you
真
feel
的
now?
是难忘天上宫阙，更
I
念
really
祖国
remember
家园啊
the home in
回到
the
祖国的
space,
怀
but I
抱
also
很
remember
踏
my
实，
motherland.
很
I
安
feel
心
so
见到
safe.
亲人
I'm
同
very
胞
happy to
很
see
激
my
动很亲切
the 8 family
中国航
members and
天
also
永远
my
值得期
friends.
待
And China Space Station will always meet your expectations. Thank you.
We can see that she is very exciting and very happy.
Exciting, very happy to be back. And of course, she's being taken good care of. And this was a very smooth exit from the capsule. She's still waving to her colleagues, her families, to people who are watching this very historic moment.
Yeah, I believe that she, as you asked, I believe she will see her 2 kids several hours
I'm
later.
sure she will lose no time
I
in
believe
going
that they
back
are
home.
now waiting in the airport in Beijing.
Oh, that would be a very touching moment. And I'm sure she has a lot of stories to tell, a lot of great ideas to share with her children, and a lot of inspirations.
Yeah, but as I mentioned, she can have video calls with her 2 kids and even can check their homeworks.
But finally, it's time for hug, for a real hug.
Yeah,
All right, and now let's see the third astronaut, number
Will be
3 of
Mr.
this
Cai
mission,
Shizhuo.
Mr. Cai Shizhuo, his exit from the re-entry capsule. So I guess the safe exits, the safe landing, the safe recovery, and the safe exits of our astronauts will really signify the successful closure of the Shenzhou-14
and
mission.
all these 3 crew members of the Shenzhou-14 all comes from the second batch of Chinese astronauts team. So all these, this group is very young. You know that Mr. Chen Dong, Mr. Cai Shizhuo, and Ms. Liu Yang were all born in 1970s, in the late 1970s. So this is a very young team.
And I'm sure the selection process is very demanding. It's a very highly competitive,
very restricted.
very highly competitive process. So a lot of histories has been made by our astronauts of the Shenzhou-14 mission. They completed the first in-orbit crew rotation with their Shenzhou-15 crew peers on board the Shenzhou space station. They were also sorting and downloading experiment data. and overseeing rendezvous and dockings, a number of scientific and technological experiments.
I mentioned to your colleagues many times that our Shenzhou-14 crew not only witnessed the construction of our station, not only joined the construction of our station, but they also ensured the success of our construction. This comes from two facts. You know that during the Shenzhou-14 mission, there comes the visiting of the Mengtian module and Wentian module.
Yes.
And you know that just before the docking, we just conducted an automatic rendezvous and docking. But if anything wrong happened to the automatic docking system, the Shenzhou-14 crew can switch mode to manual docking mode and piloting the two vehicles to dock with the station. So this is a very important backup measure for the successful construction phase.
But docking manually would be a very challenging endeavor.
Exactly. So during the Shenzhou-14 mission, Shenzhou-13 mission, the crew just tested this kind of manual docking. And you know that's the point is this manual docking is conducted remotely. You know that because in the cargo spacecraft and in the Wentian or Mengtian module, they do not have any astronauts inside. So this can only operate these vehicles remotely. And so another key point is that is position transfer from the front docking port to the side berthing port of the both Wentian and Mengtian module. And during this process, that's the difficulty is that we use a position transfer mechanism. It's a very small robotic arm, only about 100 kilograms. Okay, Mr. Cai Xuzhe is ready to go out.
Let's see this historic moment. And just imagine that these crew have departed from the Tiangong space station. They were waving goodbye to their peers just about 10 hours ago, and here they are.
They are already home.
Touching down on the ground.
So this also, what you mentioned, also representing that our technology become more and more practical.
So here we are seeing the third member of the crew, Cai Xuzhe. He was also a part of China's second astronaut corps in 2010, and the Shenzhou-14 was his maiden mission in space.
And also he conducted 2 EVA during this mission.
Right. So we'll be hearing him talking to us in just a moment. CGTN's parent company, China Media Group, is dispatching different crews of reporters covering this event. There he is.
你好，蔡旭哲。
Hello, Taikunaut Cai Xuzhe.
首次飞行就183天。
As a first-time flyer, you traveled for 183 days. How do you feel? So this is my first time for these 6 months. I really experienced this glorious view and hope I come back to our home in space one day. Thank you.
So their answers are very brief, but you could feel the weight that these simple words carry.
And we can feel his confidence.
Exactly. Confidence towards China's manned space mission and China's future space programs.
That this is his maiden flight. In the future, I believe that they still have chance for him to revisit our Tiangong space station. And even in the future, that Ms. Wang Yaping mentioned to the media many times of her wish in the future she hopes to walk on the moon. So I also congratulations to her that wish that she can fulfill her dream.
Yeah. For a lot of them already, being able to go up space and being able to work there to construct China's own space station is a dream come true.
Yeah, and I suggested her to eat mooncake on the moon, just like your colleague, Mr. Edwin Mao, eats the mooncake in the studio.
That will require some very precise timing. So there we are seeing some live picture, very exciting, very on-the-spot information, pictures from the Dongfeng landing site, where China's 3 astronauts on board the Shenzhou-14 mission have made their way back home. Professor, very historic moment because this is the busiest crew for China's space station. They've spent 183 days up there and they're finally home.
Yes, this is a really great mission. You know that it is also called the busiest crew, but it is also the most important crew during the Shenzhou, during the construction of Tiangong Space Station. As we've already discussed, you know that during the docking phase, we need the astronauts to monitor the whole docking phase. If anything wrong happened, we'll switch that to the manual mode.
Yeah.
And also during the transposition, you know that the position transfer mechanism is only about 100 kilograms, so it is very slight compared with the 20-ton level 2 modules, 2 objects.
Yeah.
So if anything wrong happened to the mechanism, we can switch that to the operations of the robotic arm. We will use the robotic arm to accomplish the transfer. So these 2 steps are the most critical and the most dangerous, challenging steps for the construction to form the T shape. So during all these steps, the Shenzhou-14 crew not only monitored the process, but also they can ensure the success. So you can see how important the Shenzhou-14 mission is.
So we are still seeing some pictures, infrared pictures from earlier, before the landing, the touchdown of the Shenzhou-14
Yes.
return capsule.